Hey, I'm Robin Openshaw. I'm the Green Smoothie Girl online, and I want to tell you why I don't get bone scans. So, about 30 years ago, suddenly there was this epidemic of osteopenia and osteoporosis. So, why suddenly did you become aware that supposedly everyone's bones have thinned and you've got thinning bones if your DEXA scan isn't high enough? Well, there's five reasons why I personally don't get the DEXA bone scan and why I don't think it's a good indicator of your overall bone health and why I think it upsells you into taking drugs that may actually be harmful. And what I do to retain my own bone mass without worrying about these scans or taking the pills they prescribe. First of all, the bone scan was invented and launched in 1994. That is only 30 years ago. And of course, in the beginning, it was the eighth wonder of the world because we had no reason to question it. Now, though, we've had 30 years to observe what happens to people who take Fosamax or the other biphosphonate drugs that they're going to prescribe you for osteoporosis and osteopenia. And I'll get into whether they work and what the adverse events are in just a minute. But both of these diagnoses, osteopenia and osteoporosis, are just made up words corresponding to arbitrary measurements based on the DEXA scan scores. So the first issue I have with this is that we don't even know what exactly is being measured with the bone scans. But the second issue I have with it is that their baseline to compare you to is that they scan 30 to 35-year-old women, and then they'll compare your bones to theirs when these women are at peak bone mass. So my third point is that all they're measuring with the DEXA scan is that there's more of something in the bone. All we know for sure is that some bones absorb the X-ray better than others. It could be that a higher DEXA scan actually corresponds to more brittle bones rather than the more dense bones that you're assuming a higher DEXA score indicates. Nobody's proven that a higher DEXA score means that you have stronger or more durable bones. And I'll get to that in a second. They also haven't whatsoever proven that taking calcium pills improves bone density or is even absorbed by the bones at all. In fact, the bones are made of a dozen minerals and trace minerals, not actually calcium. It's a theory that taking calcium pills will strengthen the bones, and the evidence doesn't really prove that taking calcium supplements help anybody with anything. But I've gone sideways. Let's come back to whether the bone scans are even actually measuring bone density. One study showed that 64% of people who had bone fractures were actually in the highest category of the DEXA bone scans. If your bone is more dense and healthy and therefore less likely to break, then why does the evidence show that most bone fractures happen in people with the highest DEXA scans? My fourth big reason to question the bone scanning procedure and therefore don't get them myself is that if they tell you that supposedly your bones are less dense than they should be, then they will tell you to take the biphosphonate drugs. These drugs may support stronger bones for a few years, but now that they've been on the market for a long time, even though there's no osteoporosis doctors, there's no specialty of medicine related to bone health. And it doesn't really seem like anybody's tracking this whole bone density story. But dentists accidentally discovered that an adverse event that happens from biphosphonate drugs is necrosis of the jawbone. In other words, the bone of the jaw dying and rotting. That's one of the risks of taking these drugs that are supposed to address osteoporosis. Why would a drug that's supposed to support healthy bone function lead to necrosis of the bone or the bones of the jaw dying and decaying? Other more common adverse events of this class of drugs are joint and bone pain, as well as nausea, acid reflux, and eye pain, of all things. So if dentists accidentally discovered that people taking the biphosphonate drugs like Fosamax and Boniva sometimes see their jawbones die, I kind of doubt that it's just the jawbone that's dying and rotting in people taking osteoporosis drugs. Is anybody even tracking what happens to people who take these drugs? As millions of people are now prescribed them and trust their doctor that the drug is going to somehow build or support healthy bone mass. Call me cynical, but it seems to me that the bone scans are the marketing tool to get people into the billion-dollar osteoporosis drug industry. And my fifth reason why I don't get the DEXA bone scans is that they are x-rays and they involve radiation. It's not that the single exposure to one x-ray is going to kill you. It's that there's cumulative damage to the body from radiation from x-rays like the one in the bone scan. And radiation actually causes bone damage and cancer. So many things related to what Western medicine tells us about healthy bones just doesn't pan out to be true. Our mothers believed that we needed to eat dairy products because they're high in calcium, and supposedly calcium builds strong bones. And actually, none of that turned out to be true. It took decades of false marketing that milk was good for your bones before people figured out that the countries eating the most dairy were also the ones with the most osteoporosis. And we were told to take vitamin D for strong bones. And then recently, a review of 3,940 studies on bone fractures showed that taking vitamin D has no connection to a lower risk of bone fractures. Let me say that a different way. Researchers reviewing nearly 4,000 studies concluded that taking vitamin D does not decrease your risk of bone fractures. Anyway, to review, the reasons I don't get bone scans and have no confidence in the scanning technology or the drugs for osteopenia or osteoporosis are that the bone scans themselves are on shaky ground scientifically. The drugs they prescribe for osteoporosis actually have some really negative adverse events, including bone dying and rotting. And there's radiation involved in getting the scans, which is destructive to healthy bones and your bone marrow, where the new healthy bone cells are growing for you all the time, and the skeleton replaces itself every 7 years. I think what's clear from the research on strong bones is that we need weight-bearing exercise, and we need movement, and we need leafy greens and a healthy whole food diet. And we aren't well served by taking the steroidal drug known as vitamin D, the ground up rocks known as calcium supplements. We aren't strengthening our bones with dairy products. And I don't have much confidence in the biphosphonate drugs either. So what does strengthen bones? I take the only whole food mineral supplement that came right from where plants were supposed to get it, fulvic and humic acids, right out of organic ancient plant deposits. If we have thinning bones or if our teeth are decaying, it may be in large part because our soil doesn't have the trace minerals and the minerals in it that soil used to have before we started strip farming. So now our vegetables and fruits don't have the minerals they need. So I take Ultimate Minerals twice a day for 15 years now, when I wake up and right before I go to bed. And I haven't had a cavity that entire time for 15 years now. Before I started taking Ultimate Minerals, I had cavities every single year when I went to the dentist. I've researched supplements for over 20 years now, and the fact that I promote only 2 is because I'm so picky and I want to know exactly what's in that supplement, because most supplements are really pharmaceutical products. Ultimate Minerals is right from the source that plants are supposed to get their nutrients from a source I really trust. I hope you love it like I do. Thanks for supporting my research, and I'll see you next time.